Hi everyone, I'm Hugo. I'm the founder of Tools for the Commons, and I'll be giving this online recorded presentation for Ethiopia conference, and to make sure that there's no logistical problems or connections problems. So let's have it recorded, and I would be more than happy to take any questions right after. So the name of the presentation today is From Geopolitics of Nation States to Techno-politics of Network States: How Humanity is Transitioning from Maps, Printers and Guns to Software, Crypto and Smart Contracts to Govern its Civilization. So I would like to start thanking Coco, Meraf and all the organization team. First of all, also saying that I'm very sorry not to be with you in Addis today, but I will certainly go later this year, probably at some point in Q2. And hopefully those who live in Addis, for those who live in Addis, I'll have the opportunity to meet with you. And for those who are coming from other countries in Africa or all over the world, then there are plenty of pop-up cities, a great agenda this year. So hopefully we can meet at some point. So getting us started, I will start recording and remembering a brief history of our operating system. So now we discuss Ethiopia as a country, we discuss states. Most of the time we described ourselves as based on our nationality, but it's not always been the case. Actually, it's a very specific parenthesis in humanity, and it's very important if we want to understand where we are heading to understand where we come from. And this is actually where we come from. So mostly from a Western perspective, and the Western governance has actually been exported all over the world and has been exported to Africa specifically. Having states and nations and the bundling of those two as nation states is something very recent at the scale of humanity. And we've been through a sequence of centralization and decentralization over the years, starting with a huge centralization with ancient empires, where scribes and swords were the main tooling of governance. Then a huge decentralization with feudalism. Then the advent of monarchies, mostly enabled through printers and guns, and then their slight adjustments with nation states, mostly after the Westphalian Treaty, which has been the operating system we know nowadays for more than 250, 300 years. And we believe that the new technologies, mostly smart contract, software, and crypto, are creating a huge shift in terms of how we can organize and govern our societies, and giving rise to the network state and giving rise to techno-politics, dissociating actually zip code and territories to the actual nature of governance. So we'll get into this concept of internet as a territory. The way we look at the internet is actually much more than just a technology. Internet should be considered as a territory, as a completely different new space where different forms of beings, including human beings, can basically be organized, and that should be treated as such, to the same extent that space is treated as a specific territory with specific governance, and that seas and international seas are also treated as a specific territory. So our vision is that the internet, because it's a new paradigm and it's a new dimension, should be treated as a territory, and not as a technology embedded in specific zip codes. And as any territory, there are relationships of powers. So this is basically where politics come, which is the management of power, and we understand the connection between territory and power. We call it geopolitics, and when we want to understand the connection between other kinds of territories like the internet, or the digital realm and power, this is when comes techno-politics. And the brand new technology, mostly AI, running on top of databases and that are powered by the internet, are creating like a completely new balance and organization of power that we can see mostly with big blocks. So here we can see the US bloc that basically embraces Canada, most of Western Europe, and Australia and Japan and South Korea that do have a full access to US governed AI with US big techs. Then we have these blacklists of territories that are completely excluded from the American AI governance. And then we see the rest of the world, which is probably 2/3 or half of the world population, that includes a vast part of Africa and a vast part of South America and Southeast Asia, that are basically right in the middle, so that are fragmented within those new internet territories between the Chinese internet and the American internet. And when we look beyond the American internet, with the Chinese internet, we see this great firewall where like the big American technologies and most of China excluded tech is actually filtered through this great firewall. So we see that we have those big blocks and this extension of sovereignties and powers into this new internet territory, and that shapes the dynamics, in our opinion, of technopolitics, and that's very important from a network state perspective. Um, and beyond AI, there's also Web3 that's a major component of the internet. And why? It's because Web3 managed the Internet of Values. And that's probably the first time since the nation state and since basically big religions like monotheisms, for instance, that humanity can, at scale, can have a very large repository, common repository of its values as an infrastructure, and with codes and with patterns and with standards. So the transition between the information age, where humans just transact or just exchange information, and the network state is actually the Web3, the Internet of Values. Why? Because beliefs, art, money, any kind of value, all of a sudden can be organized into a consensual peer-to-peer infrastructure, permissionless, stateless, nationless, where based on consensus, humans can basically organize and transact and share and multiply their value. So this is where we face now an amazing opportunity. And this is also why the internet is much more than just a technology. It's a new territory, it's a new governance, a new repository of values, because all of a sudden, everything that matters to us uh, can be organized in a completely new framework than the state or the market or the nation or the church, for instance, that are most of the modern days institutions organizing values. So we have this completely new framework that shapes technopolitics, that shapes the relationships of power as an infrastructure. And this is why blockchain and technopolitics and the network state are so intrinsically linked. And let's talk about Africa now. So in Africa, this new technopolitical concept, the network state, network societies, is particularly relevant because in Africa specifically, we can easily agree that the nation state experiment has failed. And it has failed as a governance that has been imported from a completely different context. And we will nail down now into the characteristics of this experiment and why we could find better ways to organize our societies in Africa. So, first of all, it all started in Berlin in 1884 at the Berlin Conference, where 6 nations from Europe basically split Africa into 6 different parts, 6 categories of governance, blocks of countries that are still nowadays indirectly represented into multiple countries forming each of those blocks. And many of those governance items have been actually crafted in a city in Germany to decide and craft the governance of an entire continent that had no past living experience, neither of bureaucracy nor states, and even less nations. Um, and 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 beyond bureaucracy, we can see that like another way of self-organization could occur based on the internet. And one very important premise underneath this is internet penetration. So internet penetration uh, is increasing a lot in Africa, and we see that in many places it's that's the new literacy basically. So the internet literacy is increasing. Internet can be one of the common denominators for humanity and mostly Africa. And we see that in many places in Africa, we are above 50%, in some places, even above 70% internet penetration, which means that a very large part of Africa can actually connect. So obviously, we need to improve this and see that in many countries, this ratio going above 50% or 80%. But we have like now a great opportunity to have a great common denominator based on internet penetration and to use the internet as the main way to organize societies and beyond traditional literacy and bureaucracy, where I would say that less than 5%, maybe less than 1% of African people are literate, with traditional bureaucracies and understanding exactly how laws and constitutions work. So this is where, in our opinion, the internet far outperforms and beats bureaucracy, nation-state bureaucracy, as a way to organize societies as being much more inclusive and peer-to-peer. And it's particularly relevant because the next governance systems will have to include Africa, because as we speak, the ongoing and next 1,000 babies are actually mostly coming from Africa. So if we look at Nigeria, Ethiopia, DRC, these are huge contributors just to the world from a demographics perspective. So there's no way we organize the governance of a world that is heading towards 10 billion plus people if we don't craft a governance from those people to these people. And actually, the major contributors are present day China, present day India, and Africa to build this. So this is why we can't craft and think about any new kind of governance for a world of again heading towards 10 billion people if we don't take demography and mostly include Africa at the table of new governance systems, and and don't replicate, the Berlin conference kind of paradigm to decide and set governance systems. And for this, I'm very confident in the next generation in Africa, the Z generation, the cheetah vis-a-vis the hippos, that has the opportunities, like mostly you that are being part of this conference, to craft those new governance systems out of a clean slate, and really think, as Magato had said, as cheetahs, as with this ability to move fast and to be smart and very accurate about what could tie humanity and what could tie Africans together. First describing the shared values and then iterating in terms of governance and connecting and interconnecting all these into a shared network. So my message today is primarily really for you, girls and guys. You are the next generation. I think that we are extremely committed at Tools for the Commons to build a governance from the proud South, from basically peoples and civilizations that were born and raised in a very different environment than traditional nation state bureaucracies. We are very good about what we do. We are very good about new technologies, very creative about what we can do with governance and how we can govern societies. So there's no reason that we follow and replicate again and again and again past monetary systems and past governance systems and past institutions that have been built by the Western world, and for very different realities. So my key message for you is build different things. Um, Trust your abilities to be great social entrepreneurs and civic entrepreneurs. That's a clear asset class. You don't have to be traditional merchants. You don't have to be traditional bureaucrats. You don't have to work in traditional corporations. You can build your own thing. The internet is a wonderful place to build this. Pop-up cities are very vibrant environments to make all of this happen. And if we understand that work and collaboration is all about multiplying wealth, and wealth needs to be created and multiplied within structures that make sense for the participants and that are sovereign and that have this multiplier effect. So keep doing, keep building, and that's exactly the movement we want to push and the efforts we want to support. So with this in mind, I will close describing and projecting a few different possible futures that we could share, and highly encourage you to build the latter. So we have one possible future that's called status quo, where we understand that everything is fine, the existing governance systems are okay, the way the state, the market, globalization works is perfectly fine. It's been working all the time. It created substantial wealth, and we are just facing like a very temporary small bugs that will be fixed as any kind of bugs in the past. There's a second reading of the future that is a more sort of authoritarian approach to this, centralized, and say, all this stuff about the state, the market, democracies, the welfare state, it's not really productive from a prosperity perspective. So let's look at other systems. Let's look at, for instance, what China did, and a few extremely centralized and planned regimes are doing. And we actually believe that like strong control is the main drivers to prosperity, and it's been proven by China, and it's a very desirable society that has been building wealth. So let's really bet on authoritarian regimes, irrespective of being pseudo-democratic or democratic or assumed authoritarians. And that's actually the way we should think about our societies. There's a third possibility, which is um, end of the world scenario. So this is why Bitcoin has been created. We need to recraft completely new things. We need to immediately exit the current paradigm and build a contingency system that's peer-to-peer, that's brand new, and basically forget about those past 300 years and build something completely new from the internet with zero interoperability. And let's just go peer-to-peer, build our bunkers, create our new currencies, and maybe think about fixing a few logistics and cooperation systems with this in mind, in this very pessimistic scenario. Or a last possibility, which is the one I strongly encourage building, which is the fourth sector, which is cosmo-localism, which is basically a future whereby we merge peer-to-peer tech, we merge Web3, Web4 within mainline societal infrastructure. We build a new story within the existing story, and we saw this in all big transitions of humanity. For instance, like the state has been built with almost like a merger um, between the church and the state, and basically the church didn't die with the advent of the state, so it's been like a kind of fork, actually, so like a merge within mainline infrastructure and fork. And I would highly encourage basically to build at the convergence of existing institutions, creating strong interoperability, building on-off ramps, building the rails through stable coins, through digital economic zones, creating this interoperability, which, by the way, the Ethereum network is pretty good at, and basically merge peer-to-peer networks that organize values, shared values, with mainline infrastructure to basically onboard users at scale and build sovereign networks that could be at some point possibly forked from these existing networks. But we believe that if we want to make a massive shift, we need to make billions of people very comfortable with peer-to-peer networks and techno-politics. And to do this, we need to build those rails, and those rails, they need to embed a certain level of interoperability. So that's why this merge and fork, or hybrid between peer-to-peer tech and mainline institutions, is the kind of future we project. That's what we are building. That's what we are building with many of you that are at the conference today. And we invite all of you to be part of our projects and to build from the proud South, from Africa to the world, um, and um, and to dare to build this kind of future. So with this in mind, I will thank you for your time. Again, I would love to be with you today, so please have a good time for me in Addis. Share your good moments. I would love to see you all. I'll follow with attention online what's going on. Thanks for the organization. I'll leave my contact details here for whoever wants to get in touch. And let's build together those new governance structures. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy Ethiopia and the rest of the pop-up city. See you.